What's up, Book Talk? I have finished one of the most anticipated fantasy books of 2024, if not the most anticipated. That's right. In 10 days, I finished Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. And I got a lot of thoughts, and I'm going to keep this video spoiler-free. But if you're interested in a spoiler discussion, I will have a video up on my YouTube and on my podcast, hopefully by tomorrow. So keep an eye out on that if you want some more spoiler-filled thoughts. Having said that, Wind and Truth is the 5th book in the Stormlight archive and the last book in the first arc of Stormlight. And it is surprisingly good, but it could be better. So I'm going to start with the negatives, and then I'm going to get into the positives and give you guys my overall opinion. First of all, as someone who has appreciated the mental health discussions for the last several books, Wind and Truth deals with mental health in a way that I think is rushed. I do not suffer from any sort of serious mental health issues, but I've been around enough people who have to know that the recovery process for the kinds of trauma and issues that these characters are dealing with in this book is a long time. And this book takes place over the course of 10 days. And while this book is really long, it's 1,300 pages, a lot of the stuff that these characters deal with, and I won't get into specifically who, it feels like they're dealing with their trauma in a way that I found was too quick, and often it came off kind of felt like I was reading a BetterHelp guide instead of characters who were really dealing with trauma in a complex and realistic way. Now, obviously, I understand. At the end of the day, this is a fantasy series, and Sanderson is not a psychologist. He is not a therapist. But I think he's kind of taking for granted the, last 100+ years of psychology development and condensing it down into, you just have to talk about it when there's a lot more going on. Now, obviously, this is just my opinion, and if you think he handled it great and you suffer from any sort of mental health issues, by all means, have those opinions. For me, it was rushed, and I thought that a lot of these things could have been dealt with in a better way, because he's got a lot on the plate with this book, and I wonder if maybe some of this page count could have been used towards writing these characters' mental health issues in a more realistic and compelling way. I will also say that, and people are going to call me a stick in the mud, I know, the humor just does not work in this book. Except for maybe like twice, the humor in this is just not good. Brandon Sanderson's humor and my humor does not match. So I want to get that out right away. But yeah, the humor in this is just, it's not great. It kind of reminds me of like some camp counselor's sense of humor, where it's like he's got to be really PG-13 about everything, but then occasionally he'll make like a dirty joke that's like not funny. It's like, it's youth pastor humor, and I get it. I get that's what he's doing here, but it just doesn't work for me. The humor is just a total mess. And finally, kind of my biggest complaint is I feel like this book needed more editing in general. There's a lot of like modern words in here that he only uses like once or twice, and it comes off really weird. There's a lot of modern catchphrases, that just doesn't belong in Stormlight, especially because they kind of have their own distinct language and swear words, and then he just uses other stuff where I'm like, why did we include this? Like it only happens like once or twice, but an editor should be able to catch up on those things. And I felt like that for a lot of this book. This book is 1,300 pages, and it does not need to be 1,300 pages. The pacing is kind of inconsistent. Day 1 and Day 2 are by far the slowest parts, just gonna let you guys know. But there's also some sections in here where I was reading it and I just thought, we don't need this entire chapter. We don't need a 45-minute chapter on this. This could have been said in 5 minutes or less. And that to me just really irks me. I know that he changed editors. His previous editor retired, and I think you can tell. There's just some parts of this book that are just like weird, and they're way less refined than previous Stormlight books, and that kind of really got under my skin. Now, obviously, I'm not as big of a Stormlight fan as many other people, so these are just my personal criticisms, but having said all that, a little bit more editing and a little bit more time in the oven, I think would have made this book very easily the best in the series. Still, having said that, this book is really good, and I think a lot of the criticisms I've seen online are deeply overblown. First of all, this book has a lot of representation in it, and I've seen some people on Goodreads giving it like 1 or 2 stars because of that representation. If you are one of those people, unfollow me. I mean, like, seriously, like, what's wrong with you? The representation in this book, at least in my opinion, is pretty well handled. There's romance in this book that is kind of poorly done, but I don't come to Stormlight to read romance, and Sanderson obviously doesn't take romance at the forefront of this book, but, you know, the people who were complaining about representation, I just don't understand. The representation, to me, very well done. The action, very well done. I think Sanderson might have some of the best scenes in Stormlight in this book. There were multiple moments where I was hype. I mean, I was jumping for joy. You know what I mean? Like, I was excited to continue to read this book, and every section felt like it was better than last, and that is an incredibly hard thing to pull off in a series like this. But seriously, Day 1 and Day 2, I was not loving it, but once I hit Day 3, Day 4, it kind of got in this rhythm where every day got better than the last, and in each hype moment kind of got better than the last until it kind of came to this ultimate conclusion where it's just incredible what Sanderson pulls off by the end of this. Obviously, this is also only the halfway mark, and that leaves a lot of kind of the conflicts not resolved necessarily. There's a lot of questions to be answered. There's a lot of problems that these characters will face, and I'm curious to see how those will work out. I also think that this has some of the best character moments in this series so far, especially with Adolin and Zeth specifically. I won't go into detail here, but they carry this book for me, like, very strongly. I think Zeth is now like a top 3 character for me. Adolin has been bumped up a lot since his early days. I didn't love him in Way of Kings or Words of Radiance, but Oathbringer kind of turned that around for me, and this book cemented him as one of my favorite characters in this series. I mean, those 2 plots for me were very easily the strongest, with stuff like, unfortunately, Shallan's plotline was not super strong in this. Relane's plotline in this was not super strong. Kaladin's plotline I really enjoyed, but this book is very much like Zeth's book when it comes to action and pacing and what is best written. And then there's Dalinar, and he has an incredible plotline that I think some people will really like, at least I did, but also some other people might be like, it's too information dumpy for me. So I'm curious to see what other people will think, because for some, this will be their favorite book. For some of you, this will easily be your favorite Sanderson book, and for some of you, this might be your least favorite. I know some people I've talked to said that Wind and Truth was their least favorite so far, and for some others, it was their favorite so far. For me, it is currently my second favorite behind Words of Radiance, which I gave a 10. This, however, is going to get an 8.8 out of 10 from me. It's a satisfying book to read. It's well-paced. The action is really good. The character moments are really good. And I think with just some more time and some more editing and some more fresh eyes looking at the final product, we could have gotten the best Stormlight book to date. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but it's still a really good book, and I'm glad I have some time until Stormlight 6 comes out to reread these.